The wandering star groaned like an old beast as it drifted through the outer rim, its hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts and its engines coughing on fumes. Arya wiped the grease from her hands and sighed, staring at the diagnostic panel that blinked angry red warnings. Third breach this month. The ship was falling apart, and she was the only engineer left who cared enough to keep it flying. "Daniel, I'm going into the aft cargo hull," she called through the comm system. "Something's wrong with the temperature regulators down there. Might be a coolant leak." Static crackled before Daniel's voice came through. "Copy that. Be careful. That section hasn't been opened in years." Arya grabbed her toolkit and headed down the narrow corridors, her boots clanging against metal grating. The Wandering Star was a relic from the pre-FTL era, a cargo hauler that had changed hands a dozen times before their small crew acquired it. Most of the ship's history was lost to bureaucratic shuffling and corrupted data logs. The aft cargo hull sat at the ship's lowest level, sealed behind a heavy blast door covered in warning labels written in half a dozen alien scripts. Arya punched in her override code and the door hissed open, releasing a wave of frigid air that made her breath fog instantly. "What the hell?" she muttered, stepping inside. The cargo hold was massive, far larger than she'd expected, and the temperature gauge on her wrist display read -40 degrees Celsius. But that wasn't what made her stop dead in her tracks. Eggs. Hundreds upon hundreds of them, each the size of a hoverbike, arranged in precise rows across the floor. They were crystalline, translucent, with something dark coiled inside each one. Frost covered their surfaces, and through the ice Arya could see scales, massive reptilian scales that shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist. Deep purples that bled into starlight silver, emerald greens that pulsed with bioluminescence. "Daniel," her voice was barely a whisper. "Daniel, get down here, now." "What's wrong? Arya, talk to me. Just get down here." 2 minutes later, Daniel burst through the doorway, his hand on the plasma pistol at his hip. He froze when he saw the eggs, his jaw dropping. "Are those what I think they are?" he breathed. Arya approached the nearest egg, her scientific curiosity overriding her shock. She brushed frost from its surface, revealing intricate patterns etched into the shell. "If the xenobiology texts are right, these are Drakan eggs. Real, actual Drakan." "That's impossible," Daniel said, moving to stand beside her. "The Drakan went extinct 3,000 years ago. The Confederation hunted them across 50 systems." "Not extinct." Arya's hand trembled as she touched the shell. It was warm beneath the ice, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm. "Frozen, preserved. Someone hid them here." The implications crashed over them like a tidal wave. The Drakan weren't just legends. They were the apex species of the known galaxy before humanity ever reached the stars. Massive, intelligent, capable of surviving in the vacuum of space and breathing fire hot enough to melt starship hulls. The Confederation had deemed them too dangerous to coexist with civilized species and had orchestrated their genocide. "We need to report this," Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Report it to who?" Arya shot back. "The Confederation? They'll destroy these eggs the moment they learn about them. The Galactic Council? They'll study them, weaponize them, or sell them to the highest bidder." "Then what do you suggest?" Arya stared at the eggs, at the creatures sleeping inside them. 500 dragons, the last of their kind, preserved in cryostasis and hidden in the belly of a forgotten cargo ship. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to save them, to give them a chance. "We wake them up," she said quietly. Daniel stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Wake them up? Arya, these things could tear the ship apart. They could kill us. Or they could be something more." Arya turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. "Humans were supposed to be weak, Daniel. When we first made contact with the Confederation, They thought we'd be slaves at best, extinct at worst. But we adapted. We learned. We survived. What if the Drakon can do the same? Daniel was silent for a long moment, his hand still resting on his weapon. Finally, he sighed and ran his fingers through his hair. "You're absolutely insane, you know that?" "Probably. If we do this, we can't do it halfway. We'll need to find a habitable world, somewhere off the charts. We'll need supplies, equipment, time. We'll figure it out," Arya interrupted, a smile spreading across her face. "We always do." They spent the next 3 weeks preparing. Arya rigged a controlled thawing system using the ship's emergency power reserves, while Daniel charted a course to an uncolonized moon in the fringe territories, a place where the Confederation's reach was weak and questions were rarely asked. The first egg began to crack on a Tuesday. Arya and Daniel stood in the cargo hold, watching as hairline fractures spread across the crystalline shell. The temperature had risen to just above freezing, and condensation dripped from the walls. The egg shuddered, and then a claw, obsidian black and wickedly sharp, punched through. The creature that emerged was small, no larger than a dog, but unmistakably draconic. Its scales were midnight blue, and its eyes glowed with an inner fire. It stumbled on unsteady legs, wings folded against its back, and let out a sound halfway between a chirp and a roar. Arya knelt slowly, extending her hand. "Hey there, little one." The dragon's head swiveled toward her, nostrils flaring. For a heartbeat, she thought it might attack. Then it stepped forward and pressed its snout against her palm, rumbling like a contented cat. Daniel laughed, a sound of pure disbelief and joy. "Well, I'll be damned." Over the following weeks, the cargo hold transformed into a nursery as more eggs hatched. The young dragons were curious, intelligent, and remarkably adaptable. They learned to recognize Arya and Daniel as friends rather than threats. They played in the corridors, wrestled with each other, and even began to understand simple commands. Humanity had saved the Drakon from extinction, and perhaps in doing so, they'd found something the galaxy desperately needed, proof that mercy was stronger than fear, that compassion could bridge even the widest divides between species. As Arya watched the dragons soar through the open hangar bay on their new moon home, Daniel beside her, she smiled. The galaxy had underestimated humanity once. It wouldn't make that mistake again. Neither would it forget the day humans chose to resurrect dragons.